is it going live? What's it saying? Oh, it says live. Woo woo. All right, Marcy, take it away.
Your brand was meant to shine. Wouldn't it be nice if someone could swoop in and get everyone to fall in love with your story and tell it to their friends who will fall in love too? In 2006, Leslie Vickrey founded ClearEdge Marketing with that purpose just in mind.
Welcome to the It's Better Together podcast, where intelligent conversations turn dreams into action, with hosts Marcy Stout and Allison Nissen. Each episode highlights inspirational women and practical business advice from the Revel Coach Tuesday at 2 live programs.
Hello. Welcome everyone to this episode of Tuesday at 2. We are so glad you're here. On behalf of my sister, Allison Nissen, and I, we love every Tuesday that we have an opportunity to celebrate another woman in business and learn from her, partly from her journey of how she got started, and then also just practical advice on, how to run a business and be successful. So Leslie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. And I love seeing all of these friendly faces I know so well. So friends and family, thank you for joining.
It's so nice to meet you, friends and family. So Leslie, I'd love to start just taking us back to 2006. You had this dream to launch a company and you had the courage to do it. Can you kind of take us back in time to what that moment was like when you thought maybe I could start my own company?
Sure. And thank you again, Marcy and Allison, for having me here on this to share my journey and hopefully give some advice to the people who are listening and watching to take away for their own businesses and just in general lives, regardless of what role that they happen to be in. So back in 2006, it's interesting. I did not dream of becoming an entrepreneur. So this wasn't something that I thought I would do my entire life. I kind of grew up wanting to be a writer and a journalist and ended up, after many different courses that maybe we'll get through here today, different turns on my career path, I ended up in internal communications and marketing, actually, with a few people who are here, Anna, Bill, Jane. We all kind of worked together, and I was really in-house marketing. So I did not know, I was not in sales, although I got to learn from some of the best in the industry. I did not know how to run a P&L, but I did get business and I did partner really closely with the business. And when I left the company I was at the time in 2006, I happened to be working for a firm where it dawned on me that coming from a really large company down to a smaller company, you're competing with the bigger players in the space, but maybe you don't have the same level of budget. So the first thing I did was identify a market need while I was in the role. I saw that smaller companies, and by the way, it wasn't a tiny company. It was still probably, around 25 million in revenue, if I remember correctly, that they were competing with the bigger players, but they needed to really properly invest in marketing and sales and opening new markets and potentially acquisitions. And just by hiring someone didn't mean that you could, get that full service marketing. So saw a market need and an opportunity and just decided to kind of go for it. One of my closest mentors, Bob Miano, I remember distinctly walking down the street across from my loft and being on the phone with him. And he was just like, you have to do this. You have to do this. What's holding you back? I was single at the time. I didn't have any kids. I really didn't have anyone else depending on me other than myself. So I just decided to go for it. Saw the market need and opportunity and started the company. Again, it wasn't a big dream, but decided that, why not? I could do this.
All right, Leslie. So take me to that moment when you said, I can do this. And you did. On a scale of 1 to 10, how scary was it?
That's a really good question, Allison. I don't know why, and maybe there's something wrong with me, but I wasn't really super afraid. I'm sure looking back, I was probably nervous and a little bit worried, but I've never been afraid to ask for help. And I always know what my strengths and weaknesses are. So the other thing is I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and this didn't dawn on me until I was speaking at a business school class at DePaul, and they asked the question, did I always want to be an entrepreneur? And honestly, I think because I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, it just didn't seem like that big of a deal to me to start the company and go out on my own. Now, reflecting 15 years forward, and I have meetings and I'm pulling people in to have more visibility and transparency into financials and teaching people P&Ls. They're like, how do you sleep at night? How do you've got to make this payroll. You've been hiring all these people. Oh my gosh. And, I don't know. I have faith that it's going to work. And I believe in myself and the network that we've created and what we bring to market. And so I'm sure I was nervous back then, but I just kind of went for it.
Well, that's one of the best things sometimes when you're so new at doing something or young at doing something, you just kind of go for it and then it builds. And then you look back and like, wow, how did I do that? So where you guys stand now, it's a substantial company in terms of size. What is like your approach to leading the team and, managing all the things you need to manage?
Sure. And Marcy, to your point, I probably was pretty naive back then. I didn't know what I didn't know. So it probably helped lend to not being as nervous, I guess. And if you think about it, in my mind, at least, I always think I could always go back in house and do something else if I needed to. But today, 15 years forward, I will say a lot of the things that I think about back in the day that I take forward with me today are still really important, not only in leading the company, but building our brand and how I manage our team. So first and foremost, super important. And it's really how we were brought together, as well as just fostering and nurturing a network and community. We are a marketing agency of about 50 people. And we're hyper focused on the industries we serve. So we service talent and technology. So I spend a lot of time working within those industries to build our brand, but we're really, really niche focused on the audiences we serve, and building that network and building that community has significantly helped as it relates to having people I can turn to, count on, introduce people to, and really grow our firm from a sales perspective. Internally, leadership wise, it's been a really fascinating experience for me because I've really grown, I think, in the last 5 years as a leader. And I know that I still continue to have a lot that I need to do to grow. I mentioned 5 years, I have a 5-year-old son. So I am 48 and ended up starting a family a little bit later in life, not super uncommon these days. But what I didn't realize on the leadership front was I had people on my team who were really hungry to grow. And because I was in the thick of the business, we didn't really see those opportunities. So I have really learned as a leader, and how I try to lead by example with my team is kind of letting go of certain things and not being as in the business as I am kind of focusing on growing the business or the strategy. So that's really important to me. And I remember distinctly 3 leaders from my team coming to me and saying, you've built this company that has really helped us as, people trying to have families and find balance. What I didn't realize was I actually needed it too at a certain point. So they came to me and just said, we'd love an opportunity to help take over some things. So it really forced me to rise into the role of CEO at a time that personally and professionally was critical. So I'd say in the last 5 years have probably been the most growth years for me as a leader.
That's great. I mean, it's an amazing story because it is one thing that's nice when you hear somebody step into the CEO role and they're still talking about the growth mindset, not that they have the answers, but they're really saying, I want to grow. I want to keep learning. If you were to go back, say 6 years ago, any advice you'd give yourself back then before you started this kind of the pivot in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I would say, and even this year, we had a meeting with our accounting firm today. And, one of the things is being a CEO, you at certain times you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And you hear that saying a lot, but until you are in those shoes, it's really hard to see. And we're in investment mode right now. We're investing in our brand. We're investing in, basically doing for ourselves what we do for companies. And 6 years ago, I wish we would have done it earlier, I guess is my point. So this year we really focused on finding our why, kind of Simon Sinek, if you follow him at all, really, what is our why? Why are we doing this? Which we've always known what it is, but being able to say it and be really proud of what that story is and that why, and then investing in our brand. So what we actually deliver and who we are is coming out to the public. That's something we have not done a great job of over the years. So I guess if I were to look back, I'd say, not only have faith in myself, but invest in myself and our team and the company for proper growth.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sorry, Allison, were you going to say something?
You got it.
Sisters interrupt each other all the time. We try to balance it. But Leslie, when you're saying that and what you're doing for your company, you're doing for your clients, they always say like, it's the plumbers that have the leaky faucets at home, because they're so busy serving their clients. But how did you get started with your team? Did you actually go through like your own branding process that you use on clients and apply it internally? Or like, what did you have to hire a third party? How does it look for like a rebranding process for a marketing firm?
It's a great question. By the way, I love your analogy much better than eating your own dog food or whatever. Like, where do we come up with these sayings? Anyway, we did it ourselves, and we tried to follow the process that we do for clients as well, as much as possible internally. So, making sure we talk to clients, ask them opinions of what it's like to work with us. We believe in talking to your quote unquote raving fans, doing that market research. What are clients interested in? What's the market opportunity here for growth? What's the competitive landscape? What has changed? What are new opportunities on the forefront? Really kind of forcing ourselves to walk through those steps to pull together the brand. So in the next 30 to 45 days, we'll be launching it, and I'm super excited to bring it to life.
Leslie, we have a question for you. Did you start with your own money, or did you go outside to find investors?
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for the question. I started with my own money. So we never got investors. Partially because we're a services company. I didn't have a product per se to develop. The other thing that I did was I started by hiring contractors. Now, mind you, like the very first person I hired is still with me today. I went back to the company I was with many years ago and recruited some people I knew and trusted to come on board, and had to convince them I don't have any funding. And I don't have a business plan, but I've got this great idea. And, we know some people in the industry. Let's try to make this work. And they did. They believed in me. They believed in the idea and what we could do as a team. So that was really how I was able to start with a low cost, low overhead model. I didn't have overhead space. I worked out of my loft, which a lot of startups do. The other thing that I was really fortunate about, though, was I started and almost immediately had a client. So I keep mentioning this company. Its name was Spherion, and in the staffing industry, there's a lot of people who come from kind of a group of different companies, and the executives from those companies have all somewhat dispersed and become executives in other companies. So it's kind of like the Kevin Bacon story. I can almost pinpoint to a person, 15 years after starting my company, some form or connection back to that company. So again, I was really fortunate to understand the power and value of the network I had created over the years. And I just reached out to those people and fortunately had some good opportunities. My very first deal, one of my first deals, the CEO of the former company flew me out while he was interviewing. And he said, if I'm hired as a global CEO or as the CEO to run US operations here, this is my new head of marketing, and her company will be our marketing agency. So I was really fortunate to have some clients lined up.
Yeah, it's not easy with one client at a time because you kind of you can find yourself getting too engrossed with one client instead of thinking broad. Did you find like expanding, once you start taking those steps, expanding like at a scalable, like something that you're comfortable with, that you could do it in a way that you can still deliver on your current clients, but not actually ignore all the potential opportunities in front of you?
I have to say, if anyone's listening who's with an agency, one thing that is for certain is what happens behind the scenes. You have no idea of how it all kind of comes together when you're working with an agency. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces. And I came from the corporate world, so starting an agency was really new to me. And most of the people I brought on board were new to it as well. The biggest challenge I had was not being the one to deliver the work. And this is a really common CEO problem, is that they're hiring you for you, but I'm not the one delivering the work. I used to be the one delivering the work, but I learned pretty early on that to scale and have more clients, I could not be that person. Now, what I can be is a strategic advisor. I can fly in for executive meetings. I can be available on the call whenever you need me, but I also had to hire and recruit people like me who were super senior and now I haven't been in marketing for a long time, aside from obviously running this agency, but we hire CMOs and heads of marketing for a reason. They're really, really good at what they do. And so you don't really need me, although it feels good to know that I'm there. So that was one of the biggest challenges, I think, in growing and scaling. But the other interesting thing is, we are a marketing agency, but we work very closely with the business. So we understand the ins and outs of what makes a business successful. I've partnered with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, and that has helped me learn what not to do and what to do. So I've always been very particular. I track all the time how much revenue by client and make sure if something happens that we're diversified by industry and by client, to make sure that we're not at risk. And listen, COVID's a great example. We lost our largest account within 2 months of COVID hitting. And had we not diversified our business, that would have been a real challenge for us. I'm not saying it wasn't a challenge, but it was easier to overcome because we really focus on that diversification.
Yeah, that's so smart. And with your creative process and you're having, so, you had mentioned you've hired contractors, or you have to hire people to trust that they can do the work. How do you interview people to know if they're a match with your creative, you have a very specific vision I've seen with your clients and what you have for yourself, which is really awesome. And then to trust somebody else with that, like how do you know if they're going to serve the clients creatively the way your vision would be?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marcy. It's tricky. A couple of things come to mind. One, we recruit. So this is good and bad. So right now we're addressing it from a diversity perspective. If you look at our website, it's mostly women on our team, although we have added a handful of men as of late, but we've added people to our team from within our network and people who we've worked with. So there isn't usually a big degree of separation when we're recruiting in. It could be like, for example, on the technology side of the house, we recruited in a former head of marketing for a company. They were a client of ours for many years, but they ended up getting acquired and she wanted to join our team. So we had her join our team. So in that case, she knew us very well from how we work as an agency, and we knew her really well how she worked as a client. So there's usually some kind of a connection in that regard from a creative perspective. The other thing I'll mention is this is fascinating. So our model, I'm not sure how or why it works. I think trust is a big piece of it, but we've been virtual for 15 years. So we had an office in River North in Chicago where I'm located and we're headquartered, which we don't even have anymore, but we had an office. We recruit based on talent, not location. We always have. Our clients are global, so we don't really care where they're located. And there's always been this element of trust. But I mention this because even our SVP of sales and marketing right now, Michelle Creer, she lives in Milwaukee. I'm in Chicago. I interviewed her for the role and she was referred into me. We had never worked together, but she was referred in and we never even met in person until after she started. Now, Milwaukee is what, an hour and a half, 2 hours on a bad traffic day. It's not that far away. But there's just something to our culture and our personalities and the way in which we work. We can just tell if it's a good fit or not. And that goes back to our why and what makes our agency culture and setup so unique from other places. So a little bit of it is just that trust of knowing people and working together if it's a client or past colleague. Another piece of it is just this innate trust piece. We have tried things like different interviewing processes and going in depth. I do believe in reference checking, like all of these different things. But at the end of the day, when we've done it really well, we kind of follow that process.
So Leslie, take me back. When you first started, you hired contractors and then you brought on your first employee. So how did you get to that point where you knew it was time to bring a person in-house?
It was really the person driving it. So at the time, so if you go back 15 years ago, that contracting wasn't as prevalent in marketing. So especially the people we were hiring were coming out of the work world, and that meaning corporate, they weren't contracting or consulting anyway, and they were looking for full-time work. So eventually people started driving that, where they really wanted to be hired full-time instead of contract. And again, I knew too, as we grew the agency, I had to just bite the bullet and start doing it. And it's something you just have to do as a business, and just learn the pros and cons, the burden, all of those things that kind of go into it. But if the sales are there and you feel confident in what you're doing, it makes sense. Now, fast forward 15 years, we're on the heavier side of our staff and continue to hire some pretty heavy hitters in the industry. So it's like completely flipped on where we were, at the beginning. And I go back and forth on it, but at the end of the day, we have a nice, healthy mix of full-time and contract employees, and it works out really well.
Wow. Another question from Sarah. Is your company a partnership model? If not, is it a traditional model or hierarchy, lateral model? Do you have knowledge of that?
Yeah, so we are, so it's a single owner LLC. And from a partner model perspective, we're a pretty flat company. So we have myself, and then we have a couple of other people who are in executive leadership roles. And then we have a next layer down in leadership as well. From a selling and consulting standpoint, our account, so myself and Michelle on our team really do most of the selling when it comes to the inbound. So we're 100% referral based. So that inbound piece we really manage, as well as helping with our existing clients. A big percentage of our business is recurring revenue. So our account directors, really in a more traditional partnership model or a consulting company, our account directors who are the former heads of marketing. So they run the day-to-day of the accounts with our clients, are really helping us grow the business as well. So there's several of us really out there kind of selling and building the brand and being out there, but it is a single ownership model, if that answers your question.
Well, on that same line of thinking, I mentioned to you, I have a friend of mine that she just started her own marketing firm. It started very simple, which is websites and then social media. And now it's kind of quickly growing. And so the question that she's struggling with, and a lot of solopreneurs struggle with, is at what point do you know it's time to hire? And when you do know it's, obviously bandwidth is one thing, but once you know it's about that time, for a marketing firm, small business marketing company, like, where do you start? Do you start with a virtual assistant, or do you start with another creative person? Any advice you may have for solopreneurs?
Yeah, I probably made a mistake there. I've never had an assistant. So if you've ever tried to schedule meetings with me or have me show up to things, it can be tricky. So I would say we focus, and by the way, back to that partnership piece, we are structured as an LLC, although I believe changing to an S Corp, if that helps you at all with that piece too. I know it's a big question of how do you structure and set up your company. And Sarah, I'd be happy to talk to you about that offline if you'd like to connect more. That said, we, from the hiring perspective of where do you start? It really depends on the agency side if you're internal and you're looking to hire marketing. I will say where mistakes can happen are if you hire too junior or you hire too senior. So in other words, for example, when I was hired into this other company before starting ClearEdge, I'm really grateful that I went to that firm because it helped me come up with the idea to start this company. But at the time, I was really too senior for what they needed. They needed fractional CMO thinking, but they really needed execution. And that's really where you need that kind of power behind you to ignite that spark and bring everything to life are people who will do the work for you and be really thoughtful. So the content writers, the social media experts. The downside is when you're hiring, if you hire too junior, they may not get your business. There may be some disconnects for you in that. Now, they're certainly really talented. Some of our best recent hires have been college grads who are super hungry to learn and grow. And we now have the training and the team in place to help them. But before we really didn't, and they probably would have struggled a little bit because I wouldn't have had time to properly train them. So you really need to think about what is best for what you need as a business. Are you looking to grow and scale your company? Do you have content? Do you have lead gen? Do you know your audience? And then think about the different tactics that you'll need executed and just make sure you have someone experienced enough. Now you can always, of course, supplement. So let's say you decide to go junior, well, make sure you arm them with a mentor. There's great mentoring programs to help them learn and grow. It doesn't mean you have to hire a fractional CMO. You could find someone in your network who would be willing to mentor them or help enter them into a program. Oftentimes CEOs also don't get marketing, or they think they're like the greatest marketer. But if you think about it, if you're not experienced in it, you're kind of doing that person who's junior coming on board, or even that up and comer, a little bit of injustice by not offering them the continued professional development that they need to be successful in their career and to help you as a company as well. So mentoring could really help fill a gap if you decide to go junior on that first hire.
Leslie, you mentioned mentorship, and I know you have started working with women in tech. And could you talk to that just for a brief sec?
Sure. So I co-founded with two of my very best friends, who I think Jane actually might be on here, Jane Hamner, and Anna Frazzetto, actually, who's on board, is probably our most active and often speaker and biggest fan. So thanks, Anna, for being here too. But it's a group called ARA. It's Attract, Retain, and Advance Women in Technology. We have about 6,000 people who have been part of our program across the US, and we started it, I believe it's just about 8 years ago. I will say we started as a mentorship program. We even invested in a mentor matching platform. Now we focus more on content and really bringing people together through content, not necessarily mentorship, but really not because we didn't see the need for it. It's actually the opposite. We see a huge need for it. You really have three friends who came together to address a need. I run a company, Megan runs a company, Jane works with Megan. We're all, it was kind of like a passion project that really took off like we weren't expecting. If you've ever managed a mentorship program, it takes a lot of time to work well. The matching is so critical and the communication on it. We kind of underestimated that. So we still hugely believe in it and continue to run ARA, but we partner with other mentorship programs. So Chicago Innovation is a wonderful women in mentoring co-op program, for example, that all three of us are really active in. So we try to help people get involved in other programs. I'm also involved in ASA's mentoring program, that's American Staffing Association. So if you look and you ask, you can find other programs. For the first time, I'm drinking out of their coffee mug, Chi-Tech Academy High School. It's an inner city STEM high school. I'm mentoring a high school student for the first time. So that's been really a fascinating growth experience for me too.
That's great. Well, I love the conversation around mentorship, and we have time for one more question before we have to wrap it up. The 30 minutes always goes so fast. As a mentor, when you're mentoring somebody, what's like, from your point of view, an effective style to mentor people that you're working with?
So it's mentorship is tricky because you really want to help people. And I've mentored a lot of people over the years. First and foremost, for me, at least, I really prefer to go in knowing why they sought out a mentor, and if I was selected, why I was selected. So from the very beginning, I try to understand their story and what they're trying to get out of it. Now, mind you, that could change over the course of the relationship. For example, one mentee I was paired with, she really wanted to be paired with a entrepreneur who also started a family while they had their company, and learn from me on that. But at the end of the day, it ended up being nothing about that. And we really just focused on her business and numbers and how important it was to have contracts and when is the right time to hire someone, all of those things. When you look at your financials and when you know what that should look like running a healthy company. The other thing is, it's really important for me. I put my everything into these relationships. They know they can text me, they can call me, they can Facebook Messenger me, whatever they need, I'm there for them. But I ask in advance for them to come prepared. Bring me an agenda. What are things that I can help you with? And one of my mentees right now, she's fantastic. She not only does she send me an agenda in advance, but she also follows up with me before our next meeting throughout the month to share with me what she's accomplished since our last meeting, which is really helpful. So I think just being prepared and knowing in advance so I can be prepared to help them as much as possible. The other thing is, I've been paired with people who I felt like, oh my gosh, how am I going to help them? I don't know that I can. But having a network has really helped. So if there's a situation where I can't directly help someone, I'm always trying to put them in touch with someone who can. But just knowing in advance what the agenda is and trying to help is a great way to make it work.
Well, it's also such a great example. You're teaching them how they should, work inside their company, because most bosses want to help their teams be successful. But if they eliminate the guesswork by following up with the progress and make it easy for them to show like progress and things like that, that's, half the battle to success of, working within different organizations.
Right.
So we love having this conversation, and it is unfortunately the 30-minute mark, but Leslie, if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best approach?
Sure. So the best approach is probably LinkedIn. It's just Leslie Vickrey. It's Vickrey.com or REY. My email is lvickrey@clearedgemarketing.com. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. If you want to start there and connect, then we can start a conversation. And Marcy and Allison, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun chatting with you and going down a little bit of memory lane. And for all of you who joined, thank you. Shabana, so many people, thank you for the comment there. I'm very blessed with a strong network of people who we all take really great care of each other. So thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. It was so great seeing you. And Leslie, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
To watch a live Tuesday at 2 program with Revel Coach, visit us at revelcoach.com. Until next time.